How's it going, everybody? My name is Tyler, and thank you guys so much for stopping by. Today we're going to be talking about my top 5 favorite drone movements and maneuvers. Now we're going to start off with just a little bit of context. Today we're talking about movements for standard DJI style quadcopters. This doesn't apply to FPV drones. That's a whole different subject, something I'd love to talk about, but I haven't flown enough FPV to get into that, so that's a video for another day. Second, I shoot mainly wedding videos, so that's kind of where most of my experience comes from. These shots are all going to be kind of creative minded, so if you're using your drone for things like surveying, mapping, inspections, all of that kind of stuff, you know, what I talk about today probably isn't going to apply to the way that you fly your drone. If you guys are at all curious about what drone I fly with, it's the DJI Air 2S. I do have a full review of it on my channel, so go ahead and check that out. I'll give you all my thoughts on that, and you guys can get an idea of, you know, some of the pros and cons and what I think about it. So let's get right into my first shot. The first one isn't the most exciting shot ever, but it's a go-to, and I pretty much use it every time my drone is out. The first shot is where you have the drone moving forward and you're centered on a subject. So this is a really great establishing shot, you know, building out the scene. It's a really good introduction to a sequence of shots because you're kind of moving forward into the subject or the sequence or topic or whatever it may be. So a lot of times for weddings, I'll use this to establish the venue, show, you know, people kind of the area where this event is happening, and we're moving in towards the subject. So psychologically that does something for you where you're, you know, kind of getting into something, being introduced to something. And then obviously you have the reverse of that. You're moving away from a subject while it's centered on the camera. And this kind of has the opposite effect. Same idea, super easy, not necessarily that exciting, but it does a really good job of doing what it's supposed to, which is evoking the effect that you're moving away from something, concluding something, finishing off a sequence of shots. It still does a really good job of showing the entire scope of, you know, what you're doing, but it gives you that psychological effect of like you're finishing up, you're moving away from something, you're finishing an interaction with something or a sequence of shots. So the second shot here is just a little bit more dynamic, very similar idea, but it adds some movement to it. So this is kind of the same thing where you're moving towards something, but at the same time you're tilting that gimbal down. So again, it's a really good establishing shot, but it just adds a little bit of drama or some dynamic to the shot. And with that movement of the gimbal tilting down, you're also kind of adding to the idea that you're up in the air. So you're kind of evoking this sense of altitude. Does a little bit of a better job of showing scale of something. You can see sort of the size of it compared to the other things around it. Whereas kind of if you're like eye level with something, you can't quite see the scale compared to the things that it's next to. But similar idea, sort of, since you're moving towards it, it's a great introduction shot, establishing shot, builds the opening of a sequence of shots or a scene. And then again, you have the reverse of that shot. You're moving away from the subject, but instead of the gimbal tilting down for this one, you're going to be tilting it up. Same idea. It's a great way to finish off a sequence, conclude something. You know, since you're starting facing a little bit more down towards the ground, it still does a really good job of showing you a sense of scale of the subject, but it's also really a good way to show that something is small if that's what you're after, because as you pan up, you see everything that's behind. But like I said, it's a really great closing shot, you know, finishing off a sequence. A lot of times I'll use that to end some sort of video. It has sort of an emotional or psychological effect that you're kind of pulling away or finishing off something. The next shot, and honestly, this could probably be number one. I use this just about every time I put the drone in the sky too. I haven't flown many drones other than DJI branded drones, but a lot of DJI drones now have it built in as like a automated shot to where you can just click a button and it's going to do it automatically. So this is the circle. Pick a subject and it's automatically going to fly a circle around that subject. So you can see it kind of from any angle. this is a really great addition to some of the first shots that I showed you. It kind of serves a different purpose. It sort of emphasizes the subject, so the first couple shots will tell us what that subject is, and then the circle is a really great way of emphasizing that that's the subject. And it's also really cool because it gives you sort of different angles. So, you know, you're coming around and you can see 45-degree angle here, you can see a straight on, 45 here, and then you go all the way around, and it gives you a great, you know, sense of what that subject might look like from different angles. You don't have to utilize, obviously, the whole circle. Usually I'm just utilizing a short portion of it. But like I said, it's a great way to emphasize your subject and show it from different angles all in one shot. And it's kind of just a fun, dynamic shot to look at. It's enjoyable to watch for most people. I find just that specific movement to be quite dramatic. So if that's sort of the look that you're going for, a lot of times that circle shot will achieve that. And it just makes it so easy that it's baked into the drones. You don't have to make those, you know, minute controls. A lot of times it can be hard to hold the control sticks at very specific speeds, and especially if you're turning the drone, it can be easy to see when you make a mistake. But it's really cool that DJI has those built in to the drone, so you don't have to actually do the controls, and it gives you really quick, easy, repeatable movements. The next shot that I really like to use for any time I have a subject moving is just following them. And that can be, you know, from up high facing down at them. It can be close to the ground. You know, you can sort of get a little creative with how you do it. It can be following them to the side, but it's just a really cool way to show a sense of closeness to the subject, because you're following them along and joining them for whatever, you know, journey or path that they're embarking upon. So it could be following a car through the mountains, following a bike going down a trail or going down the street. And you can kind of do it from either behind them, so you're getting their back and you're following behind. You can do it from in front of them, so you can get really creative with it, but just following the subject does a really good job of adding a sense of movement. So it's not as much of like a static subject. It shows how the subject moves, like in what fashion, the speed at which the subject moves. So it does a really good job of further showing the subject to the audience and the environment in which the subject is in. Just a really great way to show pretty much every aspect of what's happening in that scene there, and it's super useful. And then the final shot that I like to use once I've gotten everything that I know I need to, I can start to get a little bit more creative, is building some dynamic combinations of sort of everything that we've talked about. So I like to use, you know, at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 axes of movement of the drone. So it could be moving sideways while also turning, while also angling the gimbal down. So kind of coming in with like a side roll sort of thing. It could be moving forwards and upwards and angling the gimbal down. So having 3 axes of movements can make for a really just creative and exciting, dramatic shot. It's the movement of the shot really adds to what you're doing. And this is kind of where drone flying gets really fun, because depending on whatever movements you add together into one, it just adds like a really creative, unique layer to whatever you're filming. So this is where you can kind of differentiate yourself. It also just adds like a sense of epicness. Like with how fast some of these drones fly, you can almost resemble like some helicopter movements, that you can be really flying through the sky and covering a lot of ground and doing some really unique movements. So not one specific shot here, just the idea of adding multiple axes of movements and getting really creative with it, I think is a cool way to spruce up any sort of drone sequence that you're filming. And then I do have a little bonus here. This isn't something that I use all the time, but it can be a nice little additive to certain sequences. I find that the use case isn't as vast, so it sort of doesn't fill as much of a need as the other shots, but it also sometimes can be a little bit disorienting to people. It can be sort of uncomfortable to watch, but it can be a lot of fun and has its uses. So this is the top-down circle. So you're above your subject, shooting straight down and then spinning. The spinning just adds a little movement or dynamism to the shot, to where just a top-down static shot doesn't do a whole lot unless there's movement of the subject. This shot can do a really, really good job of showing scale or spaciousness, depending on how high above the subject you can fly while following your drone laws. But I think what's really special about this is it adds a sort of perspective that you can only get from a drone. So you think about standard cameras, anybody can film a subject straight on at eye level. Anyone can, you know, kind of lower the camera to the ground and shoot up. Anyone can shoot sort of diagonally down, but you pretty much have to have a drone or a helicopter to shoot straight down on something. It's just a really unique perspective that you can only get with a drone. So it sort of just emphasizes that this is, you know, a different perspective that the human eye really doesn't get to see very often. So that's kind of where it can be really impactful. But like I mentioned, I feel like this is something that should be used sparingly, because sometimes, depending on how fast you're spinning or, you know, whatever it may be, it can be a little bit disorienting to people. And that's pretty much all I've got for you. I'm sure these are things that you guys have been, you know, using throughout your drone filming journeys, but I wanted to kind of give my perspective as someone who takes the drone in the air all the time, and I'm using it for sort of all sorts of different projects. I felt like showing you the types of shots that I'm coming back to over and over again. My goal is just to help you guys take full advantage of whatever equipment that you have and whatever gear you have and really put it to work for you guys. So I hope you're able to learn, you know, some different movements from this that you guys can put into your next project and really take full advantage of. If you guys feel like I missed anything, or you have any really cool creative shots that I didn't share here, feel free to drop them down in the comment section below. I'd love to see what creative things you guys are doing when you take the drone out in the air. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Feel free to like and subscribe on this video. But until next time, I appreciate you guys all sticking with me, and I will see you later.